to one person. It's a person you would know. Well, you don't know him personally, but you've read about him, you've heard about him all your lives. Somebody who showed willingness to obey the will of God, even when he didn't really want to. It was very much against his desires. Can you think of who it is? Hint, Old Testament figure. Abraham. Yeah, Ibrahim in Arabic. So what does he do? He nearly sacrifices his son. Okay, he's commanded to sacrifice his son. He has waited to have a son for so long. He finally gets one, and then God tells him to sacrifice him. Convinced that it's the voice of God, he's willing to do it. And I have to admit, for some people, with teenagers, it wouldn't be that hard. But for Abraham, it was a big deal. He did not want to go out there and kill his son. Okay? So he is, in that regard, the ideal Muslim, small m, a person who submits to the will of God. So he is an example of Islam, submission. Okay, so then we talk about the next pillar of Islam, which is prayer. Notice the gestures. I won't go into detail. We could spend hours just on Islamic prayer alone. But you notice one thing. The touching of the forehead to the ground indicates total what? Submission to God. Okay? This is a time-honored Middle Eastern gesture of submission to a monarch. I picked this one just because I just thought it was so fun. This is in the Philippines. I mean, you pray where you can, right? So these kids are on top of these little motorcycle taxis. Yeah. Okay. How many, oh, by the way, I should have asked, how many times do you pray a day? 5 times. But I want to say something about that before I go into fasting. Sorry. The prayer in Islam, salah, is really, I would call it liturgical prayer or ritual prayer. You can pray as many times as you want during the day, but that formal ritual prayer, which is the fundamental ritual of Islam, is done 5 times a day, at times spread from morning through into the late evening. And that's, you can do it individually, you can do it collectively in the mosque and so on. There's another kind of prayer called dua, which you do individually, and that's more spontaneous. You can do that as often as you want, anytime you want, anywhere you want. Okay, let's go on. Now, fasting is another pillar of Islam, and devout Muslims are serious about this. They fast from sun up until sundown during the holy fasting month of Ramadan. Now, in some countries, what you do then is you boogie all night, so it can get out of hand. But it's sort of like Lent and Mardi Gras, I guess, or something like that. But the spirit of it is that you devote yourself to studying the Quran, reflecting, and also donating to the poor and giving. Mormons can understand this. We believe in fasting too, once a month. And for 24 hours, but it's the same principle, basically. Zakat is almsgiving. Literally, the word in Arabic means something like purification. You purify yourself in some way by giving to the poor. It's usually considered to be a 40th of your possessions, your income, 2.5%. And in places where the Muslim state, they will actually have sometimes a zakat tax, which then takes that money and uses it to build mosques, do charitable deeds, and so on. In other places where there's no state support for the religion, it's done privately by collection within the mosque organization. It's really up to Muslims. They've evolved various ways of doing it in various countries. All right, another of the pillars of Islam is the Hajj, or the pilgrimage. The idea of going to Mecca and Medina at least once in your lifetime, if you can. Not all Muslims can. Many are too poor or for health reasons, whatever. But if you can, you should try to go to Mecca. And that's a picture of the Kaaba in Mecca, which is the center of the Islamic world. Muslims do not pray to the east, okay? They pray toward Mecca. When they're in Mecca, they're praying toward that building, the Kaaba. When they're near the Kaaba, they're praying specifically to a particular corner of the Kaaba. Now, if they were north of the Kaaba, they'd be praying to the south. If they were to the south, they'd be praying to the north. If they're in a spacecraft orbiting the Earth, it gets more complicated. But anyway, and during the pilgrimage season, as you can see, there are a lot of people there. It's like General Conference on steroids, right? And this was a time when Muslims have come historically from the far reaches of the Muslim lands, from Morocco and from Indonesia, from Central Asia, from India, and so on. Historically, it's been a great time for people to come and exchange ideas and exchange books in the pre-printing days and so on, when communications means were poorer. Okay, Something like going to the temple. You may have noticed this building out the window. Latter-day Saints believe that you should try to make it to the temple in your lifetime. And it's a big deal for us to go to the temple. That's sort of a culmination of our life in the church, is to go to the temple and receive the ordinances of the temple. There are a lot of points, I won't go into the details, but a lot of points of similarity between the pilgrimage to Mecca and the idea of going to the temple. Certain things that I think actually, they share some common roots. Okay, now the sixth of the 5 pillars is jihad. Never quite made it into the canonical list of the 5 pillars. But it's there, and it's really important, and of course it's very much on people's minds. What does jihad mean? Does it mean holy war? No, it doesn't. Jihad means striving or effort or something like that. I sometimes say what it really means is practical action. It's getting your hands dirty, if you will, in a way. I mean, prayer and fasting and reading the scriptures, the Quran or whatever, those are good things. But if all you ever did was to sit around reading the text and praying, you wouldn't be living your life well as a Muslim or as a Mormon. For a Mormon, if you spend your entire day reading the scriptures, we'd say, get off your duff and go do something. Go out and work on a welfare farm, or do something for somebody else. So jihad, especially from many modern Muslims, is a matter of doing something to live your religion, to build up an educational system in your Muslim country, to build relations, to do something. Like Mormons in the 19th century would say that worship is prayer, yes, but also digging irrigation canals to make your community in 19th century Utah or Idaho a better place to live. That's serving God, okay? So there are some ideas. Now, another thing that has to be mentioned is when the Prophet Muhammad died, there was a division over who should succeed him. And again, I'm oversimplifying to beat the band here, but basically 2 factions arose. And this will sound very familiar to Latter-day Saints. One faction essentially said, there must be a successor to the Prophet, but it doesn't much matter who that successor is. I mean, again, that's oversimplifying, but it could be any number of people who could be the successor. There was another faction, the smaller faction, it turned out, who said it matters very, very much who the successor is. It must be the nearest male relative of the Prophet. Does that sound familiar to you? The LDS or RLDS split? Now, it's complicated by the fact that Prophet Muhammad did not have a son who lived to maturity. He had a son by the name of Abraham, who died as an infant. He had a son-in-law, though, by the name of Ali. And so, a faction gathered up around Ali, who was the Prophet's cousin, his son-in-law, a heroic fighter in the early Islamic wars and so on, but he was very, very young. Still, a faction gathered around him and said, this is the man who should succeed. And so they were called the Shia to Ali, the faction of Ali. That's the origin of the Shia, or the Shiites, that we know today. And this map shows where they're sort of concentrated. The majority of the Islamic world, about 90%, is Sunni. And you see that in green there. The Shiite world is more constrained in a way. You see it there in the, whatever that is, purple or something like that. I have no idea on this what the blue is.
Ishmael. Maybe Ishmael.
Yeah, but they're not even the dominant faith there. So I don't know. Anyway, I love this one. I know several people where you have mixed marriages, Sunni and Shiite, and I've heard the term sushi used before. I know the ambassador of Iraq to the United Nations, and he used that. He says there are whole neighborhoods in Baghdad that are sushi. So he said, we don't want to fight each other, we get along just fine. Okay, but what arose, and I'm almost done, this is, like I say, a whirlwind tour, and then we can do questions afterwards, but I like to take questions, because I never know really what level people are at or what they want to hear about, and okay, I'm almost done. But my favorite definition of the word professor is, a professor is someone who talks in other people's sleep. And I don't want to do that, so if I can avoid that, if I can answer your questions, I'm happy to do that. But I do want to say, when the division arose, there was an institution that was created called the Khilafah, the Caliphate, or however we say it in English. And that's basically, the word means something like a stand-in, a vicarious representative, someone who stands in for the Prophet Muhammad in perpetuity. ended basically in the early 20th century. I want to tell you a story about it. I don't want to go over the time. I'll be really fast. My wife is here to keep me honest. But there's a story told about the death of the prophet. He had been sick for 4 or 5 days. He died rather unexpectedly, at least most of the people didn't expect it. And so there was kind of a crisis. You can imagine, again, I'll draw a Mormon comparison. When Joseph Smith was killed, the man who had created the community, the man to whom everyone looked for leadership in the Mormon community in the 19th century, the question was, what do we do now? Or think of an even more powerful example, the death of Jesus, right? Where the early Christian community, what do we do? You know, this is the man we pinned everything on, and he's gone for those first couple of days anyway. So the same thing happened in Islam. And so you have a story told where Omar, who will be the second caliph in the Sunni tradition, is outstanding. He's talking to a group and he's trying to assure them that the Prophet Muhammad is not really dead. He says, you know, his soul has gone into the heavens. There's a tradition that he did that at one point. Well, that's what's happened. He'll be back. The man who will be the first successor to the Prophet Muhammad, Abu Bakr, comes walking along. He sees this. He listens to Omar speaking. And Omar is obviously trying to convince himself, probably, that everything is okay. This is not a good situation. What do we do now? Abu Bakr goes into the home of the Prophet, where he sees the body and he recognizes he's dead. He's really dead. He's not coming back. And so he walks out, and the tradition says he walks up to Omar, the younger man, quite passionate. He puts his arm around Omar, and he says, Omar, be still. Calm down. Calm down. Then he turns to the audience, and I love this statement because it seems to me so true. He turns to the audience and he says, for those of you who worship Muhammad, Muhammad is dead. For those of you who worship God, God lives. And then they realize that Muhammad is dead. I mean, if Abu Bakr, this trusted senior man, is saying he's dead, then he really is dead. So Abu Bakr is almost immediately chosen to be the Khalifa, the Caliph of Islam. But there's a dispute that breaks out right there. You know, when you have some people saying, no, he wasn't the right one, it should have been Ali. Now, another term you need to know is the term, and then I will be done. This one just sort of, I threw it in because I figured I had to mention it. It's the term imam. Imam, in its basic sense, comes from the Arabic preposition amama, which means in front of. This is the person who stands in front of the congregation, often as a preacher, typically as the leader of prayer and so on. He exemplifies the prayer, he leads it. Prayer involves certain ritual actions, and so when he kneels, you kneel. When he gets up, you get up, that sort of thing. He sort of sets the pace. The word is not iman, by the way. I hear that a lot. I met the imam of the mosque. Iman is a different word. It means faith. Imam is the prayer leader, the leader of the mosque, and so on. I just want to show some pictures of mosques. Go back just to that one. Then I'll finish really quickly. This is the mosque of Sultan Ahmed, or the Blue Mosque in Istanbul. One of my favorite places on the planet. Istanbul is one of the greatest cities in the world. I always give a travel recommendation ad for Istanbul. Go there, it's magnificent. You wouldn't expect that was a mosque, that Chinese thing we just saw. I'm making a point about the widespread culture of Islam. Here are some others. You can see they vary a little bit. Go back, sorry. The one in the corner there, I used that once on my blog. There's a mosque that's planned for Orem, Utah, down where I live. And so I'd heard that there was going to be some protesting at the local city council meeting. So I was gearing up for it. I love nothing better than a good fight like that. So I put that picture up on my blog and said that was the planned new mosque in Orem. It's actually in Pakistan. It's enormous. But to my great disappointment, there was no furor at the city council meeting. It was really, really boring. So anyway, this is the interior of a mosque. That is not the mosque in Pocatello. Pretty spectacular. This is the oldest mosque in the United States, a very humble affair. Mosques can be very, very simple. This is one of my favorite mosques. Somebody built this out of PVC piping underwater for Muslim scuba divers. So there you have the little niche indicating the direction of Mecca, and you can pray while you've got your tank on and you're underwater. I don't know how many mosques there are like that. Then this is just the interior, looking up into the dome of a mosque. They're some of the most magnificent pieces of architecture you'll find almost anywhere. But okay, that was a little bit of a basic understanding. Is that a tsunami to represent the talk I just gave? Anyway, that was something to give you some idea to sort of prime the pump for the discussion. So thank you very much.